Anu mi'idin anu mi'ish ploni shuchayiv golot. We're a few lines from the top on Beis and Beis. And this is the quote from the Mishnah, where the Mishnah stated, good morning, Aaron. The Mishnah stated that if we test the witnesses come and they frame somebody and they attempted to frame someone to go to Galut, the guy should go to exile. What do we say? The Mishnah says you don't do to you do not. This is one of the exceptions to the rule. You do not do to them what they wanted to do to others. We don't send the witnesses to Galut. Rather, what do? We give them Malkut. That's what the Mishnah states. Now, the question is, why? Gemara wants to understand the reason for the Mishnah. Generally, the Mishnah states a law. The Mishnah is very concise. It's the law, the halachot. Yehuda Hanasi put together the halachot of the Mishnayot. The Gemara is much lengthier than the Mishnah, because the Gemara explains the sources, the possible sources for the law, the reasons for the law, and that's why now that's what the Gemara here is trying to understand the law. That's what we're supposed to do in life. When you learn Torah, you learn the mitzvot, you're supposed to try to understand to your best of your ability, where is it coming from? So here, the Gemara is asking that question. Minohani mileh. What's the source? 4 lines from the top. What's the source for this halacha of the exception to the rule regarding framers who framed the guy to go to Galut? Omar Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish says it's based on a one word in the pasuk. The pasuk, when it discusses going to Galut, going to exile, it says. By the way, Yosef, Yaron, you sent to the group that we're on. The group knows. Yaron's going to send to the group, okay, Yosef? Because you look like you're busy a little bit davening. So the Gemara says, "Amrei shokash the amakro, hu yonus el achatarim." When the pasuk states when the guy runs to the Urim Miklat, it says he runs to the Urim Miklat. Now, it would seem to me that the word "who" is extra. You hear that, Yaron? The word "who." There's no such thing as an extra word, as an extra letter in the Torah. The Torah could have stated, good morning, Jaime. Jaime, we are on Beis Amid Beis. We are on 2B. I presume in the art scroll, it's still 1 in the art scroll. Okay, about 5 lines from the top.
Thank you.
Welcome. In the art scroll, it's on the right, it's on the left side. Left side, about 3 paragraphs down, Menahani Mileh. The Gemara is trying to, it's Menahani Mileh, Amrei Shlokish, Tamakra. The Gemara is trying to understand what is the source that if a witness has framed someone to go to exile, and the court, based on the testimony of the witnesses, gave a verdict that this guy has to go to exile. This is the guy who killed the guy unintentionally. And then 2 of the witnesses come into court and say, how could you 2 guys say that? You guys were with us in China on that day. You could have been in witness this thing in New York. So you would have thought, send those witnesses to Galut, send them to exile, because that's what they wanted to do to the other guy. But the Mishnah states, no, this is an exception to the rule. We do not send the witnesses who framed the guy to go to Galut. We don't send him to Galut. Gemara wants to know, Menahani Mileh. How do we know that? Where do we know this from? So the Gemara says, we have a pasuk. Hu Yonus. Could have said in the pasuk, Yonus, he runs. What's the hu Yonus? Extra who, he. We know that if you look at the pasuk, the subject of the pasuk is this man who killed. So you could just say, Yonus, he should run. We know it, who you're referring to. Why use the word who? Why the extra word who? So the word who is telling us this law. Is teaching us only the man who actually killed unintentionally runs to Galut. He runs to exile. Who velo zomim, but not the witnesses who frame someone. The framers who frame someone does not go to Galut. They do not Their punishment is not to run to exile. What is their punishment? Malkut. They get lashes. So that's what the Gemara says. That's the opinion of Reish Lakish, based on a pasuk in the Torah. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, I don't. It's not based on that pasuk. He doesn't understand that word "who" is coming to teach us that. He understands you don't need a pasuk to teach us this. We can learn this from a kal v'chomer, something that you can learn from a kal v'chomer, which, like we said, kal is light, chomer is strong. If something that's light, it's like you say, if a light heavyweight champion can knock out this guy, certainly the heavyweight group in the boxes can knock out this guy, right? Generally speaking. I mean, usually I would say if a heavyweight is stronger than a lightweight. That's what I would speculate. Maybe there's something to argue, but you understand what I'm saying. If a guy could go ahead, if this guy could defeat this enemy, so someone stronger could definitely stronger than this guy could definitely defeat that enemy. So that's the kal v'chomer. So yes, what do you say, Aaron? Right. Every word, every letter in the Torah. Exactly. There's no such thing. Yeah. Right. The who, Yaron is moved by how the Gemara analyzes or how precise every word and every letter of the Torah is. That this word that doesn't seem to be necessary to be written. We could have got away without writing it if it's written because it's teaching us a halakha, teaching us a lesson, teaching us a halacha. So Rabbi Yochanan says you don't need a pasuk, like the Gemara says, like svara, something that's logical. You don't need a pasuk. A kal v'chomer, you don't need a pasuk because that's if you can learn that from a kal v'chomer, you don't need a pasuk. He says like this. What's his kal v'chomer? He says the following: Mahu she'osa maaseh. He did an action. Mahu, who here is referring to a person who kills someone. B'mezid. Someone kills someone intentionally, but he was not warned. There's a halacha. In order to kill somebody for committing murder, he has to have been warned beforehand. He has to have been told, if you do this act, you're going to get there's death penalty for you. Yeah, right. If he's not warned, he doesn't get the court, even though there's witnesses. The witnesses say we forgot to warn him. He did it intentionally. He took out his gun. He shot the guy, but he wasn't warned. So what happens? There's a technical loophole. The technical that he does. The court can't kill him. Hashem will deal. So when we understand that Hashem will deal with it. So he's not gonna get away with murder, because God is going to go ahead. Hashem and Hashemayim will deal with the guy. So the law is that even when there's no warning, and we're not going to mete out capital punishment against this murderer because he wasn't warned. He doesn't even go to Galut. We don't send this guy to exile for this act of murdering without a warning. He doesn't get any of that. Even Galut he doesn't get. Even though he did an action. He actually took a gun and he shot the guy. Or in the old days, an arrow, a sword, let's say a sword. But he still doesn't go to Galut, even though he did an action. So the Gemara says, so Edom Zomimim, when they didn't do an action, what did they do? They spoke. Speech is not an action, even though we consider speech very strong. You know, speech is a big deal by us. We don't follow, what is it? Sticks and stones will break my bones and words will never harm me. We're not of that philosophy. We say words harm me. Words are a problem. Words are very serious. We have many prohibitions in the Torah that deals with speech. Don't use God's name in vain. Don't talk negative about a fellow Jew. And we have many mitzvot that we have to do with our mouth. The mouth, we hold our mouth are a big deal, but nevertheless, an action is a stronger act than a word. When a person, when a person violates the Torah by doing an action, that's where generally there's the punishment of lashes of malchut. Person violates the Torah and he eats not kosher. He did an action. He used a razor blade on his beard. He used an act on his face. He did an action. An action is a stronger act than speech. A person says a negative comment about his fellow Jew. That's not an action. It's a speech. He does not get lashes for it. He doesn't get malchut, perhaps because the act that he did was not, he was involved less. He did less. He wasn't as proactive as when a person actually does an action. So perhaps that's why the Torah says there's malchut for action-packed lavim. When the Torah says don't do something and you did not follow, there's a malchut. But most of the time. But when a person did not follow Torah through a lighter act, so to speak, through just speech, which did not take so much effort, the violation was not done in a more, it was less effort was done to violate the Torah. It takes more effort to eat not kosher than to say a not kosher word. They're both not kosher. The not proper word is not kosher, and the eating the not kosher. But one was more involvement in the act. So that's where the Torah gave the malchut, when there was more action. So that's what the Gemara says. If when the guy was more active, when he actually took a gun and he shot the guy without being warned, but he did an action, yet he does not go to Galud, he doesn't go to exile. So the person who did not do an action, he came to the court, he testified. Now you can say, Rabbi, testimony is an action, but it's a lesser level because he spoke with his mouth. It's less than actually taking a gun and shooting somebody. So certainly they should not go to exile for framing a person, because we find to go to exile, the Torah is not so fast to send the guy to exile, because the Torah does not send the guy who actually shot a gun at somebody and it was not warned. We don't send him to exile. So if we don't send that guy to exile, Kal v'chomer, certainly that guy doesn't go to exile. Certainly this guy who went ahead and violated the Torah by speech should definitely not go to exile. Morning, Morris. That's the Gemara's Kal v'chomer at this point. So we're going to read it inside. Mahu, the guy who killed somebody without a warning. She'asa ma'aseh. He did an action, right? B'mezid. He did the action intentionally. Eino goleh. He does not go to exile. Hain, the witnesses. She'asa ma'aseh. B'mezid. They did not do an action intentionally. They did an intentional act, but they did not do a what? An action. Eino din. Certainly. Shelo Yiglu. Good morning, everybody. Morning to everybody who just came. Ein adin shelo Yiglu. Certainly they should not go to what? To exile. That's what the Gemara says. That's the Kal v'chomer. So the Gemara says, the Gemara responds that this Kal v'chomer is not a good Kal v'chomer. Okay? We are on the art scroll. We are on 2B. To be, we gotta be great people. To be, right? To be or not to be. That is the question, right? But that is our responsibility, to be. Yes. Yes, Yaron. The Kal v'chomer, just to bring everybody up to date. We welcome everybody. We are on 2B1. We are we just from the top of the page now on the right column. 2B1 right column. Then the Gemara suggests a Kal v'chomer to explain the law of the Mishnah. The Mishnah stated a law. Good morning, Mr. Haber. The Mishnah stated a law. Here's the Gemara, Mr. Haber. Right over here, top of the page. The Mishnah stated a law. Mr. Haber, we're going to tell it to you while you're getting ready. The Mishnah states, like, why are you traveling? Why are you coming today? When you're on the way. The Mishnah stated that a person who killed witnesses, who framed somebody, they framed him to go to exile, they said somebody but was murdered. We didn't know who murdered the guy. These two witnesses come to court and they say it was Reuven who did it. We were there. We saw that Reuven killed Shimon on that day unintentionally. We were in the forest. We witnessed that the guy he was chopping with his axe, and boom, the axe, the iron of the axe went flying and boom and killed the guy. It was Reuven who was shopping in the forest. And therefore Reuven is obligated to go to exile. Reuven is not supposed to be living in town with everybody else. Reuven has to go to exile. He murdered somebody unintentionally. He belongs to go to Golut. He's supposed to go to exile. So then comes two other witnesses and say, hey, you guys
Rabbi.
said you were in the forest. You weren't in the forest that day. You were in China that day with us. You weren't in New York in the forest in New York upstate. You were in China. Good morning. Welcome.
Rabbi.
Yes.
So
Morning. Yes.
when we're talking about exile, we're talking about the 4 settlement cities that
The six cities.
The six cities.
Cities that were designated. 3 in Eretz Israel itself and 3 in Ever Yarden, the other side of Jordan, that goes to people to run there. Let me give you a Gemara. We're doing the Gemara Makkos. We're trying to figure out the Gemara's. Here we go. Thank you for joining in. Pleasure. We are on base on the base. We're trying to figure out what's the source for this law. We got a law. The law is Adam that framed somebody. Most of the time, the Torah says what the general rule is: you do to the witness what they want to the other guy. But here, if you caught the witnesses, but here, the Torah says, the Mishnah says, there's an exception to the rule. If they framed someone and they said he was the one who killed the person unintentionally, and therefore, and the court said, okay, we accept you guys' testimony, and this guy is deserving to go to exile based on your testimony, and then walks in two witnesses and say that you guys had no way to, you could not have seen this happen. You were no way in that forest area. You were 6,000 miles away at that time. So, and what does the court do? So you would have thought the court should send the guy, the two witnesses who framed the guy, you would have thought send him to exile. Like that's what they wanted to do to this guy. They wanted to send him to exile. You would think you should send those two guys to exile. Yet the Mishnah says no. This is an exception to the rule. These two witnesses, the first pair of witnesses who testifies falsely, who framed the guy, they don't go to exile. What do? They give him lashes. Is that clear? That's what the Mishnah states. Now the Gemara is trying to know we have a law. What's the basis? What's the reason for the law? Where does the law come from? Why is this an exception to the rule? The Torah says you do to them what they wanted to do to the other guy. Why should these witnesses who framed the guy, wanted to send him to exile, why should they, to me, it's maybe getting off the hook by just getting lashes. I mean, with all due respect, lashes, it takes a few minutes. It's a terrible, but what's say? So I'm saying right, if they go to exile, it's going to affect the whole family. Everybody's going to have to run to exile. I gotta leave my community. Exactly, my children, everybody's affected. I got to go to exile. Maybe the wife and kids will come with them to exile. They'll live with them, but you're uprooted from your community and everything. And if you leave exile, you could get killed by the family member. So you're in bad. The guy's in bad shape. So why did they get off the hook over here? So to kind of call off the hook, but why is the punishment a different punishment? Why isn't it the norm? That's the Gemara wants to understand. That's the Gemara's question. So we're now on the second answer of the Gemara. The second answer of the Gemara was a kal v'chomer. We learn it from a kal v'chomer. We find going to exile, the Torah does not send the guy so fast to exile. And therefore, we're going to say, this is also, the Torah is not going to send the witnesses to exile so fast either. Where do we see that the Torah doesn't send the guy so fast to exile? And that should dictate to us that these witnesses also shouldn't go to exile? Because if what happens if a guy murders somebody intentionally but wasn't warned? He wasn't warned. He did it. It was cold-blooded, as they say, right? Is that the right expression? He went ahead. Morning, Ariel. He went ahead and the guy murdered somebody. Morning, everybody. Welcome to The minyan is 7:30 upstairs. Welcome. But if you want, you could, if you have a few minutes here, if you want, whatever you want to do is good. Okay. The Gemara says, so what happened? The guy, what's the Kal V'chomer? The Kal V'chomer is the following. A guy murdered someone intentionally. Intentionally did it, but he wasn't warned. What's the law? The law is the court down here does not kill the guy if he wasn't warned. In order, one of the technical details in order to kill somebody for causing murder is they have to be warned. What'd you say? It's a precondition. He has to be warned, just like if a guy eats not kosher food. You can't give him, even though he intentionally eats not kosher, he has to be warned first, or else he's not going to get lashes. So that has that aspect of warning, exactly. Also, we have a similar thing by warning. Only if the husband warns the wife not to be alone with that man, and she violated the warning, then she's forbidden to the husband until she drinks the water. That's what happens to her. Once she drinks the water, if everything goes good, she's all right back to the husband. But that warning, the violation of that warning, and she was alone enough in that room, she could have done a sin with that man. She's forbidden to the husband until they check her out.
Yeah, Rabbi, those water, people used to take advantage of that also.
I mean, we find Chana, I don't know if at least Chana threatened to take advantage of it. Right. Chana said, God, I don't have children. She didn't have children for a while. God, please give me children. If you don't give me children, I'm going to do this trick. I'm going to be alone with another man. Then I'm going to have to drink the water and everything will come out good. And then I'll be blessed that, that was what she said. Okay, obviously it needs clarification. What is she threatening God? Okay, but but that's exactly what happened over there. But getting back to our Gemara, if a person murdered someone without being warned, the law is not only the court down here doesn't do anything to him. We don't even send him to Golot. We don't even send the guy to exile. We don't even send him there. We don't. So the Gemara says, if you don't send him to exile by murdering intentionally with an action, he shot the gun at the guy. Certainly, witnesses who did an action who did something intentionally without an action, they just spoke words. Speaking words is not it's a lower level crime when you sin with your mouth than when you sin with your actions. Generally speaking, it's a lower level crime because an action is a stronger type of. You did more in you going against God. You go against God more when you do an action against God than when you speak. When you didn't follow God's rule by doing an action, there's much more involvement than when you didn't follow what God says by saying something. It's less of an act in levels if you want to grade the level. So that's the Kal V'chomer. If an action, intentional action, shot the guy without being warned doesn't go to exile. So certainly the Gemara says, speaking, just coming to court and testifying, which is not the same level action of a cold-blooded murder with taking a gun. It was done through the mouth. Certainly you should not go to exile. That is the Kal V'chomer. If the heavyweight doesn't go to exile, the lightweight shouldn't go to exile, right? If the higher level sin didn't go to exile, certainly the lower level sin should not go to exile. That's what the Gemara, that's the Kal V'chomer in the Gemara. And then the Gemara is going to knock it out. Look what the Gemara is going to say. Yes. That's true. That's true. But the fact that this guy, even if we say we find that for attempting to kill, we do attempting to harm somebody, we do to them. But at the end of the day, we're comparing someone who actually did it and someone who attempted to do it. And we should say that if the guy who actually did it does not go to Galut, the witness also should not also go. So what does the Gemara say? So the Gemara shoots back, Vihi no tenet. The Gemara says exactly what you said is the reason why it's the reason why he should go to Galut, the witnessing. Why? Why should he go to Galut? Because who she'asa ma'aseh b'mezid? The guy who murdered someone intentionally. He did an action. The reason why he doesn't go to Galut, you agree, you want to take that killing someone with an action is a stronger act than attempting to hurt somebody with your mouth. Doing something with your mouth, you said, is less than doing an action. So the reason why they don't go to Galut by killing somebody intentionally without being warned is because Galut is not enough. Going to exile is not enough of a kapara. We don't want the guy, it's not enough to atone for the sin. The consequence, the punishment needs to match the sin. If the sin is such a high level sin, it's not that the Torah is very strict and is very strict about who goes to Galut. And the Torah is, it's very hard to get in. And therefore, if he can't get into Galut, he's not told to go to Galut. Therefore, a person who the witnesses should not go to Galut. No. The reason why he doesn't go to exile, the guy who murdered someone intentionally without being warned, because exile is not enough. It's not the right atonement. Every punishment that Hashem gives to a person, whether it's malchut.
Did we lose the rabbi?
Yes, yeah. I don't hear him.
Yeah, it is. Wait, he's coming back. Rabbi, you're on mute. Rabbi, you're on mute.
Instability with the computer. Yes, thank you, Yosef. So that's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, "He anosenes who she'asa ma'aseh b'mezid lo ligli." He should not go to exile. The guy who kills someone intentionally without a warning. He should, in order that this is not going to be it's not enough. Not only it's not enough of a kapara, and this should not be an atonement for him because this is not enough to meet the crime. However, hey shelo asa ma'aseh, meaning, and also if you're going to go ahead and send the way the Gemara's language is, if you're going to send them to Galut, then the Gemara says we don't want this to be a kapara for the guy because it's not enough because he needs more than that. But hey shelo asa ma'aseh, the witnesses that when they came and they framed the guy and they say this is the guy who killed the guy b'shogeg unintentionally. So they did not do an action, the witnesses. What did the witnesses do? They did a speech. So they sinned by speaking. Maybe they should also go. They should go to Galut when they did it intentionally. That this should be a kapara. It should be a proper atonement for the witnesses who killed the person who attempted to send the guy to Galut through their testimony. We should send those witnesses to Galut. So why don't we send those witnesses to Galut? So therefore you can't tell me the Kal V'chomer. You can't tell me that the reason why we don't send the witnesses to Galut, because if that guy doesn't go, certainly this guy doesn't go. These guys don't go. No, that guy doesn't go because it's not sufficient for him to go. But with these guys, it makes sense that he should go to Galut. So why doesn't he go to Galut? The Gemara says, "Ela machvarta." The best way to go, machvarta k'da'amar k'da'Reish Lakish. Like Reish Lakish said, I'm going to turn around and see how this goes this way. Machvarta k'da'Reish Lakish. Like Reish Lakish says, the machvarta is like Reish Lakish. I had someone recommended this to me yesterday. So following the recommendation. Okay, the rabbi turned around so we can face more people instead of my back to the people. Just forgive me. So that's what the Gemara says. The best way to go is like the first answer of the Gemara. What was the first answer of the Gemara? Because the pasuk says, "Hu yonus." The Torah says an extra word, seemingly extra word. He shall run to Golut. What is he? Only the person who actually killed the person unintentionally, but not the witnesses. The Torah says witnesses who frame somebody. We don't want those guys that God does not want to send them to Golut. They don't go to what should happen to those witnesses. They're going to get lashes for it. They're going to get lashes. That's going to be the punishment for. And perhaps the idea is that this type of punishment of exile, of separation from the family and everything else, and maybe like what you mentioned, someone mentioned before, like maybe what Mara said a little bit about the effect on the family. We found the concept in the Gemara earlier that we don't, the rule of asisim lo kasher zamam la'asod la'achiv, the punishment is only if it's going to affect the person himself, but not if it's going to affect the person's children. We're not going to punish the person what he wanted to do to someone else if the children will be affected by it. Right? We said in the Gemara yesterday, if someone framed the Kohen and he said that the Kohen was unfit to kuna because his mother was previously divorced, and then we find out that that these witnesses were not there at the divorce proceedings because they were somewhere else. We don't make these witnesses, even if the witnesses are Kohanim, they're Kohanim, we don't invalidate them because they want to invalidate this Kohen, because if you validate them, you're going to validate the children also. So maybe perhaps this wide effect of going to Galut, of the uprooting of the whole family, to go ahead and give that punishment so we don't do to them what they wanted to do to the other guy, if it's going to have such an effect, even though they want it on the family, perhaps, you know.
In the case of false witness, right? Let's say the only thing that separates them from being a false witness who got caught and are just a regular, like, testifying falsely and not getting caught is that somebody came in and
Said you were with us, some other town.
so why should that not warrant them from getting the same punishment that they should have got if the entire thing went through?
Because the effect, perhaps the effect, again, the Torah doesn't give a reason. Torah does not give a reason why. I'm just, again, they attempted to frame this guy to cause this problem, right? But the question is, if we're going to punish them and the great effect that it'll have on the family, and we're suggesting maybe that's perhaps why the Torah did not give that type of punishment here for the, I mean, it's a suggestion. I'm not saying that's listen, we do kill the guy. The guy tried to kill somebody. Witnesses come and try to kill someone. They frame the guy. We will kill them. It has a great effect on the family. The guys will get killed. You know what I'm saying? But we do find that concept. But I'm just, perhaps maybe, okay, the Torah does not give a reason why that this is an exception to the rule. But this is an exception to the rule. The witnesses don't go to exile for framing someone to go to exile. What happens to them is they get lashes. The witnesses don't get, if they're Kohanim, they don't lose their rights to Truma if they frame someone. What happens is they get Makkos. Those are two of the exceptions to the rule. Okay, very good. So now the Gemara says, Ama Ula. Ula says, Remez Edim Zomim Torah. What's the remez for Edim Zomim? Where is the hint in the Torah for this rule of called Edim Zomim? As we explained, Edim Zomim means witnesses who frame, framers, so people who frame people. So Yaron says, what kind of question is the Gemara's question? With remez? You want to know a remez? Where is a hint? Remez means a hint, right? There's something called pardes. Pardes says pshat, remez, drush, and sod. There's different ways of the Torah, how the Torah is expounded upon. Remez means something hinted to. You know, if you want to say this week's parasha, there's a connection. Last week's parasha ends with the idea of, the parasha ends with the idea of Kikaran Arpanav, Moshe's face was shiny. And then this week's parasha opens up with Shabbat, the mitzvah of Shabbat. So the Baal HaTurim says, the connection is that someone's face on Shabbat is a different type of face than during the week. Last week's parasha ends with the shine on someone's face. The glow on your face is different on Shabbat than during the week. And that's symbolic. hinted to by the fact that there's a connection between the shine of Moshe and Shabbat. So maybe that's something that's hinted to. But it's not open in the pasuk. This is open in the pasuk. Yaron said, what kind of question is the Gemara's question? Remez. Where is it hinted to? There are many things that are hinted to in the Torah, but then there's things that are open in the Torah. This is open. There's psukim in the Torah. So how could you ask a question? Where is there a hint to it? You know, where's a famous thing in the Rambam? The Rambam says, there's a famous Rambam when he uses the word remez. What does the Rambam say? Blowing the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. The Rambam says, Maimonides right. Blowing the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, gezeirat hakotofu. The Torah says you blow a shofar on Rosh Hashanah. But what does the Rambam say? But there's a remez. There's something hinted to. What's the hint in the midst of blowing the shofar? Wake up from your sleep, guys. Not you guys. Wake up. People are sleeping in the way they're living their life. They're sleeping. They're not living a proper life. They're sleeping, they're being lazy, they're not doing what they need to do in life. It's an alarm clock. The shofar, the Rambam says, is the idea, there's a remez in the blowing of the shofar to waking up from and looking at our actions and becoming a different person. That's remez. This concept is not open in the pasuk that the blowing of the shofar is for the purpose of waking us up from our sleep, so to speak, as Jews. Being sleeping Jews, we have to be active Jews. That's not in the pasuk. But what does the Rambam call it? A what? A remez. It's alluded to in this mitzvah of blowing the shofar. So how does the Gemara say remez? How does the Gemara say, where is it hinted to the mitzvah, the idea of Edom Zomim? It's in the pasuk. That's the Gemara's immediate response. Remez Edom Zomim. Look, see, it says in the pasuk, "Vasitim lo kasher zamam." Yaron's question. It says clearly in the pasuk, you do to them, right, what they wanted to do. It's not a remez. It's not a hint. It's black and white, open, clear. So the Gemara answers, Ella, what does he mean? What did Ula mean? You don't understand what Ula meant. God bless you. When Ula said remez Edom Zomim, he wasn't referring to the general case of Edom Zomim. He was referring to the cases that we were discussing in the Mishnah. Where do we see it's hinted to that you give lashes to Edom Zomim? Meaning to say, when we don't do kasher zomim, when we can't implement, do to them what they wanted to do to others, because we said there's an exception to the rule. There are some exceptions. You can't do it by when they wanted to frame a Kohen. They wanted to frame a guy for exile. They don't send them to go. You don't do to them. So what do you do to them? We said the law is you give them what? Lashes. Where is that? Where is that hinted to? Where do we see? The Torah doesn't say the idea of lashes to Edom Zomim. We don't see a pasuk that says, it says person who desecrates the Shabbat. Torah says gets killed for desecrating the Shabbat. We don't find that the Torah says that when Edom Zomim, guys who framed other people, doesn't say they get lashes. The only thing the Torah says is you do to them what they wanted to others. So now when you don't do to them what they wanted to others, and you're telling me that the punishment is lashes, where is it alluded to? There's no pasuk. So that's Ula's question. Yes. No. If she's more kasher zamam would mean you do to them what they want to do to others. And those cases, they didn't want to cause lashes to the other guy. When the Mishnah says you give them lashes, it's not that they wanted to cause, the witnesses wanted to give lashes to the other guy. No, the witnesses wanted to send the guy to Galut. So based on, I see them doing to them what they wanted to the other guy. Thank you, Mr. Cohen, for joining. Based on what they wanted to the other guy, we were not giving lashes. They wanted to make the guy unfit for Kuna. They didn't want to give lashes. But even so, the punishment is what lashes. Where is it alluded to? That's what the Gemara now is going to say. Stay tuned tomorrow. We'll see where the Edom Zomim get lashes. You have to stay tuned. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Jake, be in touch later.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes.
Wow, there's the time flying when it's enjoyable, Rabbi.
Yes, that's very nice. Yes. Thank you, Yosef. Thank you for enjoying. Yosef says that the time is flying when he's enjoying it. That's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a labor of love, but it's not even, shouldn't even be a labor. It's not even, shouldn't be a labor. Yes. And look up. No, that aleph is connected here. That aleph is not to the pasuk. The aleph to the pasuk is the aleph with the thing afterwards. This is the Rambam. It tells you where you find it. The aleph tells you where you find the Rambam. Yeah, where is it alluded to? Where did he get it from? Have a great day, Jaime. Have a great day.
Rabbi,
Joseph,
when
have a
is the
great
Rosh
day.
Chodesh? Tomorrow?
No, next week. Next week.
Next week? Kaf Dalet. Oh
Yes.
yeah. Kaf Hey. Kaf Vav.
Akiva, thank you. Akiva, thank you very much. Okay, have a great day, everybody. Yosef, have a great day.
Rosh Chodesh is right on my birthday.
That's beautiful. Next
My
week.
English
Let's
birthday,
figure-
I mean.
Next week. So look at the calendar, which day. Okay, have a great day,
It's
Yosef.
Friday.
Mazel tov, Mabruk on your
It's Thursday night to Friday.
Thursday night, Friday, he said. Have a great day. You too. All the
Yeah,
best.
it's my English birthday.
Mazel tov, you too, Nathan. Beautiful,
Yeah,
Nathan.
that was,
How do you like this action-packed?
it's a lot easier for me because less of like having to memorize. Like, am I wrong? Like,
It's more the
it's
concept.
more concepts, not like
Details on-
Like,
Right.
It's easy to forget those.
Right, it's a different focus.
Yeah.
As we thought, we wanted to change it up a little bit, yeah.
I love it.
Thank you very much. Nathan. You have a great day, you too. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, Rabbi.